If Marc Bergevin isn't the GM for Vancouver, any other names we should be looking out for that job? Scott Mellenby's out there.
I could see the fit there. It seems like they're not in a rush for this job. Like I think that they're very much, Stan Smeel is the acting GM, been around the organization a long time, even originally as a player. They have the Sedins there. Like I think that they're going to run it by committee this year, is my sense, and maybe wait to see what else happens. I mean, I think Jim Rutherford would make a lot of sense too.
Interesting.
But
he's a good GM.
Well, I think he'd be ideal in a president role. He's into his 70s now. Just couldn't have a better demeanor. Like, the man has seen everything.
Yes.
And
he's won.
Well, yeah, he's won a cup in Carolina and 2 in Pittsburgh. And not a lot of GMs ever win cups in multiple cities where they're the GM. It's hard to do that.
All post-lockout Stanley Cup wins, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And he's got a calming influence. Again, he's seen everything, so I think he'd be good to bounce ideas off of for whoever works under him. I know he wants to work. For sure, he wants back in. And so Vancouver makes a ton of sense with him. At this point, I have got no reason to believe that, I don't think that they're not doing interviews yet, right? Like,
we don't know.
Remember, we have an opening in Anaheim, like an interim GM. We have an interim GM in Chicago and no vice president, president above him. So there's openings in 2 front offices. They're not doing interviews yet. I mean, this is going to be a very wild, I think, off-season for front office changes, because just the fact you have all those openings, you're going to have some kind of musical chairs going on. I would assume some of the people that fill those jobs are going to be today working in a different place. Now you have Marc Bergevin, recently available. John Chaika.
That's another name I thought about that. Yeah, a lot of people have brought his nim up.
I do think, I'm not sure that he wants to be an NHL GM again. I'm not completely sure of that. I've had people suggest to me they see him, I think he might even have grander ambitions.
So he wants to be like a president?
Or maybe, get involved in other sports too.
Oh.
I actually think this is where sports are headed. I'm not saying the NHL is there yet, but where, if you're a great soccer executive, why can't you run an NBA team?
So basically like what Ralph Kruger did.
Yeah, but Ralph is a total outlier in the moment. I could see more of that happening because the skills you need overlap. Like, the GM's job isn't necessarily to break down the game perfectly. I mean, obviously that's a skill set a lot of them have. There's so many GMs that are former players that understand the sport like in their bones because it's what they've done their entire lives. But I think there's enough evidence in baseball in particular where if you're a manager of people, if you're on the cutting edge of sports science and analytics and how to run an organization, how to chase best practices, how to find that extra 1% of an advantage or something to tilt things in your favor, that you might not be able to have to diagram the perfect power play because you hire a coach who can do that.
That's it.
And you hire scouts or people that make evaluations on players, and so I'm hoping out of this, Julian, this is not at all what you asked, but that we get to a spot where we see maybe some different types of people get these jobs. I just think it would be interesting. I also think it's a clear blind spot that the industry has or the sport is dealing with. And I'm not just talking about sex or race or anything like that. I even just mean people that have come from different places, education-wise or whatever. Like it's, yes, of course, there should be women in the front offices of these teams, and it doesn't presently exist.
Right.
You're seeing that in baseball. Again, I just think hockey is so far behind. So I'm not, I guess I'm saying a lot of change. I think there's a chance for a lot of change here because there's a lot of openings, and let's get after it.
I mean, the fact that a name, not to bring Montreal in this, but one person whose name I've kind of heard just kind of here and there in line for the Canadiens GM job, and I don't even know if they're actually in for an interview on it or how serious they would take her. But Emily Castonguay, the agent for Alexis Lafrenière, is a name that I've heard hey, why can't she go for that job? When Elliot mentioned the idea that, well, not just Elliot, but he was referencing the fact that Jeff Gordon mentioned the idea that the Canadiens could even possibly hire a player agent. I was thinking of her before Elliot mentioned Kent Hughes as an example. And that's also another area where NHL teams could look to go to for GMs, right? And not just some of the other guys who have been around different GMs. You've probably seen the the video going around where these kids are all at like a table and they have these water bottles and they're just kind of shooting them at different people, just like passing them around the table. That's basically what the coaching and GM carousel is like. It's just the same guys getting passed around. So I like the idea of newer bodies and newer people and newer faces being introduced to these teams. So if it works for Vancouver, if it works for Montreal, if it works for Anaheim, that'd be really cool just to see.
Well, and you can do it if you have, especially if you have someone experienced there, right? Like you can hire Jim Rutherford, who is very much a traditional hire, who has worked other places, and then put someone new to learn under him. Like that, there's nothing like that would work. And I think that's maybe what Montreal's a chance to do. I mean, Jeff Gorton is extremely experienced. He had a long career in Boston in their front office before having a long career in New York, before being the GM of the Rangers. Like he's been around the sport. And so, he's the experienced person now in this scenario. Why not Emily Castonguay? And I haven't asked her. I don't know if she would even want to do that.
I don't know either.
But if we're throwing a lot of names around, which especially in the Montreal job we are, I mean, what team is more incentivized to do it than Montreal because of the language issue, right? Because they're drawing from a different type of pool anyway. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in that too, to take some of these steps and to, every team is looking for that 1%, right? Like, and one of the ways you get it is by obviously having people that see the world a little differently, that have different backgrounds, that have a different viewpoint on how to handle certain scenarios. And so, the time is coming. Like, it is inevitable. Like,
yeah.
I have no doubt about it. I just don't know if it's going to come in this round of hirings, but probably should.
I mean, it's already come in forms of hockey media, too, in the way that, not to make this into an entire discussion on that could be a whole episode in itself, but we're already seeing it in terms of the platforms that we're using and the way, the fact that we have a podcast like this is part of that change, too. So it's only inevitable that the teams that we cover and we talk about essentially kind of fall in line and say, hey, you know what, like, you guys have to be adaptive to the new world that we're in, too. So yeah, I think I'd be really pleasantly surprised and happy to see the Vancouver Canucks and the Canadiens or anyone else kind of go in a different direction as opposed to just getting like a typical hockey man getting it. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up doing that.
Right.
Anyway.
4 teams right now with like
pretty decent jobs.
Yeah, like that are making significant hires, like either GMs or presidents or whatever. But and I'm not sure that that's the end. Like, I've heard there's still some more out there. Even coaching carousel might be swinging still.
Any names that you're willing to dole out now?
No, I'm not going to fire someone before they're fired. And because it's not solid enough information to really get any one fan base up in a tizzy. But certainly there's rumors swirling that even after the change in Philadelphia this morning, that there could be another head coach on the hot seat.
Perfect segue to the Philadelphia Flyers because I wanted to focus on them. Also, I want to give you props for the fact that instead of just kind of throwing out random names and being sensationalist about it, you were honest and you're just like, hey, like, it's not solid enough information. That's why I really respect doing the show with you because you're not afraid to just be like, yo, I don't have this information. It's not solid out there. So kudos to you for doing that. But I do want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers and the fact that Alain Vigneault, the head coach over there, he is no longer the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. His assistant, Michel Therrien, again, the Montreal connections, both those two guys, right. Once upon a time were Canadiens head coaches. They are no longer part of the Philadelphia Flyers coaching staff. Mike Yeo is taking over in the interim, and this comes a couple of days after Chuck Fletcher. I think we briefly mentioned this on one of our episodes last week where he addressed the state of his team. And this team, as we're recording this podcast right now, is in the midst of an 8-game losing streak. So times are not great in Philly.
They're not great.
Nope.
And, something had to give there. This is a pricey one, too. I mean, if there's one thing with the Philadelphia Flyers, they're always willing to spend money to get out of a problem. Like, they gave a monster buyout to Ilya Bryzgalov after giving him a monster contract.
Humongous big
buyout. I love Briz.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more fun characters we've seen in the game. Yeah.
But, this is halfway through a $25 million coaching deal. So, much like the Toronto Maple Leafs had to eat Mike Babcock's salary at the time, that's what's going on. And I think it is a reflection, though, of the seat being pretty hot there for everyone. It doesn't sound like they're going to jump right into a big coaching search. To me, Rick Tocchet makes so much sense. I mean, the Flyers, and this is to their credit, actually, they're one of the organization, like, it really actually means something to be a Flyer. Like, that has it has like attributes you can attach to it. It has
Yeah,
a
the
feeling.
identity. Yeah.
And it matters, and it's carried through the years, and it's carried over lots of different teams, and it's carried through times. I mean, they still haven't yet won a Stanley Cup since the 70s.
Yeah.
But they've been pretty close. They've been in the final a number of times since then and lost.
2010, I think, was the last time they were in the Stanley Cup final.
They were there in 87 too against Edmonton.
Yes.
But anyway, I think that who you hire, if that person is qualified and has those types of things, it's a bonus. And Rick Tocchet ticks the boxes. I know he's a really well-respected coach. I'm not sure we can look at his time in Arizona and really judge him because, a lot of different things going on there during his years. And
can we go into more detail on why Rick Tocchet is a good coach? Because I was always confused as to why he was getting these opportunities in different markets, right? Because he was in Arizona, he was on the Penguins staff as well. We know his history with the Philadelphia Flyers. I was always confused because it never seemed as if the teams he was a part of. Was he in Tampa? Am I wrong on that? I'm trying to remember. Maybe I forgot.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. But still, I'm just curious, why does he get these opportunities?
Well, what I've heard is he's just an excellent communicator with players, probably because of his background as a player. And that he can really, I know in Pittsburgh he got a lot of credit for dealing with Phil Kessel. And, Phil is a bit of a complicated guy. I actually really like Phil. I dealt with him in Toronto for years, and I came to not just appreciate what he does on the ice, but to understand him a little better. But, he's got to, for lack of a better term, he's got to be managed a little bit, right? And
Sure.
that was a big thing Rick Tocchet did. And the reason the Penguins won the first Stanley Cup 2016 was because they had three dynamic scoring lines. And the reason they had three dynamic scoring lines is because Phil Kessel was awesome.
Yes.
Along with Hagelin and Bonino. And so, I think he deserves credit for that then, that the coach that helped keep Phil in the right places and the right frame of mind, I think he worked with him a lot. And so he is a good look. He went way down the road with Seattle.
Yeah.
He had 3 or 4 interviews in Seattle, which is usually if you're getting the 3rd or the 4th interview, it's because you're getting the job. And Seattle had 18 months to look at the whole crop, to consider all kinds of options. I mean, I know he's a hockey man, as you're saying, but I do think that there's a lot there to like. And so, as I say with Arizona, look at the teams he was coaching, and just it hasn't been a stable environment. I actually believe they have a plan to try to make it a stable environment now, but there's some things beyond their control at the moment. But I think Tocchet makes tons of sense for Philly, but I don't know if they're going to go there because it sounds like Mike Yeo is it's weird. They sort of announced it like he's coaching tonight's game, as though we have no other choice. But then from more digging, it does sound like there's not a real rush here to go hire another replacement, and they might just kind of see how it goes for a time.